We start with a video presentation of one of our mentors, and maybe we can tell you about the mentors. So part of what we've been doing with the journal is not just bringing the voices from the global south as we talked about in the morning, but it's also providing the support needed for scholars who need it, especially when you're publishing in English or English is not your first language, but also if you are publishing and you are not, you're new to the publication of research studies in English or depending on what format you use. We usually use the American Psychological Association writing format. So what we will do is here a video recording. It will be basic in terms of publication by one of our mentors who has been mentoring some of our authors and submissions. And once you're done, we will open it up for a dialogue, for conversation, with some questions, and we can hopefully provide some tips on what do you need if you want to publish, at least in JEMS. I guess. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Anastasia Khawaja. I use she, her pronouns, and I am currently sitting in Tampa, Florida at the University of South Florida in the United States. I'm going to share my screen. All right. So today I am thrilled to be discussing demystifying the academic publication process, breaking it all down to set a foundation for success. I am at Into University of South Florida. I am a senior instructor of English and also an adjunct professor of English, again, at the University of South Florida. I want to begin my presentation, as I begin all of my presentations, with the land acknowledgement. As I presently sit on the traditional homelands of the Tocobaga, Calusa, and Seminole peoples. Today, Florida is home to the Seminole, Miccosukee, and Muscogee and Choctaw groups. Individuals of other Native groups likewise reside here. I wish to recognize the historical and present impacts of colonization, violence, and displacement on Indigenous communities here and in other places. So today I am thrilled to be discussing the publication process and breaking it all down and discussing everything from the abstract to the conclusion and the introduction. And yes, there is a reason why I am saving the introduction for last, and we'll be discussing that towards the end. So the reason why we are talking about this today is that I have had the pleasure of being able to review a lot of different manuscripts and papers from students to scholars who are coming from around the world. And what I'm finding, what a lot of other people are finding, is that the ideas that are coming out are rich and innovative and incredible, but they're not getting disseminated. They're not getting published, mainly because of this English barrier, because a lot of publications, if not most publications, are in English. And if you don't have a strong foundation in English, and also an understanding of how the publication process works in English-related or journals, then you are at a disadvantage where you're not going to be able to get your work out there. So I am partnering with different journals and different editors to be able to bring different manuals and videos and helpful hints, and to be able to work hopefully with international scholars one-on-one to be able to give you the tools to get your really important work out there. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the abstract. Now, the abstract is probably going to be the very last thing you'll write, just like the introduction. But the abstract is basically a snapshot of your work. It's a snapshot of your study. And it's usually broken down to about 6 to 7 sentences, 150 to 250 words. You want to look at the big picture. You want to understand the gap that you're trying to address. You want to show how your paper is going to fill that gap and discuss what materials you're going to use. At the very end, you want to talk about the general results as well as the implications for your readers. So in other words, what are they going to take away from this paper by sitting down and by reading it? Again, it's a snapshot, and they should be able to have a pretty good understanding of your study at the end of your abstract. All right, so because we're going to talk about the introduction last, we're going to jump right into the literature review. Now, the literature review can be a complicated animal. As I've worked with a lot of international scholars and students, the lit review is the thing that gives them a lot of trouble, in addition to some domestic students as well, because you have to review the past research and you have to cite that research properly. And then you have to be able to articulate how your idea fits into the existing research. So I have a kind of a do and don't list for you, and I talk about crafting your literature review. And I say crafting, as do a lot of other people, because the more studies that you read, and we'll go ahead and we'll use a puzzle because my 6-year-old loves puzzles. Every study that you have, every study, you bring another piece of the puzzle. And by the end of your lit review, you should have a completed picture in front of you where you understand where all the studies have come together to be able to better justify your own research gap and your own idea. So read widely. It is so important to read as widely as possible, and then categorize your studies carefully. Understand the different themes that your idea brings, but also understand what themes have inspired your idea in the first place. So it's really important to be able to read widely. You want to be able to justify your gap. When you are reading widely, it is really important to keep track of your key words. You need to understand what keywords work. You want to understand what keywords may not yield as many studies. And you want to be able to keep track of each study question, the methods, results, and implications. And I do this in a chart form. I don't write complete sentences. I just do some bullet points. This can help me to synthesize and put my ideas together in that discussion section. It saves you a lot of time, again, if you keep track of your studies in either a PDF or printout. Nowadays, everything is digital. So unless you print out all of your articles, having kind of a folder in your desktop or on your laptop or on your USB drive that's accessible with a Word doc that has a chart where you can keep track of all of these different studies will be very helpful. In addition to that, having a separate doc that keeps track of your entire reference is also going to be really helpful. Now, there are a lot of different citation machines to help you with this, but they are not always 100%. So it's always a good idea to just keep track of all your citations, either in a citation machine or on a Word doc. I love a good old-fashioned Word doc because it's editable and it's right there. And I also can edit it carefully to make sure that I'm not making mistakes in italicizing and capitalization and punctuation, because the citation manual, whether it's APA or MLA or Chicago or the like, are very exact and they are very specific. All right. The next thing to always make sure that you do is you want to review the studies critically and compare and contrast the findings among each other. The more you're able to compare and contrast what they have in common, the similarities and the differences, the better chance you'll have to solidify explaining your own research gap. And you want to choose studies which will help you to better solidify your research gap. But you don't want to be subjective. You don't want to give opinions. And you also don't want to include studies that do not contribute to your research topic. Now, that doesn't mean to only choose studies that will support your topic. You want to make sure that you include studies that include a wide breadth of knowledge and a wide breadth of perspectives and ideas. You don't want to shy away from those studies that may not support or might be semi-contradictory to your own work or to your own research. Those studies are going to help to enrich your own study and will also help a lot when it comes to limitations, et cetera, which we will also talk about a little bit later. Also, again, do not forget to cite all sources properly, be they are quotations or they are paraphrasing. You need to make sure that you cite all sources properly. All right, so once you have your lit review and you've solidified your research gap, now it's time for the methodology and the results section. Now, your methodology section is the section where you should be able to write down exactly what you did and how you conducted your study, which means your reader should be able to read the methodology section and be able to duplicate that work. You want to include your participants, you want to include your location, you want to include general background. And then what I like to do with the methodology is I like to organize it by research question and how I am going to analyze my data. I'm not going to give my results yet, but I'm going to discuss how my data is going to be analyzed. Sometimes I can do that in a chart form, especially if I have a mixed method study where I'm dealing with quantitative data and I'm dealing with qualitative data. Sometimes it's just simple prose. Once you have written your methodology section, you want to make sure that you have your results section in a very clear and concise manner. The results section is only for your results. Okay, you want to make sure you're not evaluating, you're not explaining, you're not arguing, you're not commenting. There's time for that in the next section, the discussion and implication section. And that is going to be the section that might take the longest time to write and to explain and kind of put together. And then finally, of course, in the results section, this is where you can add your charts, your tables and figures. Make sure they're clear, make sure they are not overused, and also make sure that they are explained. You do not just want to plop a chart or a table in there and think that that is going to be self-explanatory. You want to make sure that you foreground it with an introduction, you have your chart or your table, and then you want to point out the key ideas that you want your readers to pay attention to the most. That will also help you as you move into your discussion and implication section. The discussion section is probably one of my favorite sections of the research paper because I get to show my readers, my reviewers, or whoever is reading my paper, how my study fits into the existing literature. I get to make my case for my study to be part of the research conversation. So I have here synthesizing and etching your space in the research conversation, because it really is truly a conversation, isn't it? The more that we read, the more presentations that we engage in with each other's work, we're going back and forth in conversation with our findings and our ideas, and we take them in new and different directions. And so when you write your paper, when you contribute your knowledge, you are contributing to that important conversation. So this is where you highlight the key findings. You relate your findings to past research. Acknowledge your limitations, absolutely, but show how your research belongs in the conversation. And the way you can do that, the easiest, is to be able to produce implications. How can people use your results? What do these results mean in practical terms? How can we use those ideas that you're bringing to light in whatever field, in whatever topic? And of course, coming to this conference, I see there are so many important topics to look at and so much important work happening. So how are they able to be, so how are the findings that will be practically implied is going to be crucial for your reader to understand. Again, do not include studies that support only your results. Do not focus on your limitations. Again, they're not negative. And you don't want to overgeneralize or overreach your findings. You want to make sure that you're able to discuss ideas and key findings that you can back up your claims on. So really quickly with limitations in future research, when you're talking about limitations, again, as I said, they're not negative. You want to identify them before your reviewers do. So when you're going through the publication process and you have these different reviewers, you want to acknowledge the different places where your studies might have fallen short, like size and generalizability are the most common limitations to studies. And then you want to use your future research directions to offer possible solutions as you move your ideas forward in new and possibly innovative ways. So you want to be able to show your reader that, yes, this is my idea, these are my findings, this is my discussion, these are the implications. Oh, but the conversation isn't over yet. We can continue in this direction and in this direction. And sometimes that helps to take care of some of the limitations that you mention in your limitation section. So the conclusion can be a pretty daunting area. Especially because after you've done all of the work, a lot of times we say, well, how do I end it? Or sometimes beginning scholars, international scholars, and other students of mine just basically forget the conclusion section. They finish a discussion section and limitations, and here's my future research, and the conclusion. So the conclusion is the very last part that will be read. It will be the last thing the reader will remember. You want to make sure simply that you just restate the topic, the argument, the key findings, and then your final thought. Your final thought, make sure it's memorable, but make sure it's not out of nowhere. Make sure it's not, as we would say, out of left field. Make sure that it can be connected. Make sure that the reader can connect to it without thinking that it's not somehow related to your whole study. That's one of the biggest pitfalls of a conclusion, is that you might have such a great idea, but it kind of comes out of nowhere because it's not as connected to your study as it could be. So after you finish your fantastic conclusion, you want to go back and you want to write your introduction. Now, your introduction is essentially showing your reader the big picture. This is not the abstract where you show your whole snapshot. This is the big picture kind of overview that you have before you get into the lit review and before you get into the rest of your paper. I love to start inspirational. I am mostly a qualitative research with a bit of quantitative mixed in, so I can start with quotes. I can start with inspiration. If you're in a different field, maybe statistics. Something that is going to grab your reader's attention and say, oh, I didn't know that, or oh, that's really reflective. Something that's going to keep them reading. You don't want to overthink the introduction. You want to get the reader's attention, state your position if applicable. Very, very brief lit review, maybe a couple of very key studies that you might focus on a lot more. And then you want to get into your research gap and then your overall study overview. And that's it. But you definitely want to make sure that you briefly address that research gap in your introduction as you start setting up your whole study. So this is a brief overview of the publication process and the different parts of the research paper. Luckily, I am in the process of developing a manual that should be out in the next couple of weeks, as well as an accompanying video to be able to expand upon some of the key areas of publication, such as, again, the lit review, synthesizing, and of course, quoting and paraphrasing and using APA or any style book that your journal requires appropriately. So make sure that you proofread, make sure you check APA formatting, and there are several sites to do that, and make sure that you cite quotations and paraphrases appropriately. As well as the final thing, if it's possible, write about what you are passionate about. Write about what you enjoy. Write about things that you want to research, if it's possible. I know that in some cases we can't always write about everything that we're passionate about, but at least try to when you have a chance. If you can't write about what you're passionate about, hopefully make sure that the work that you do is important. And make sure that it can contribute to the research conversation. So I want to close with a quote, and it says, first, organizing it on paper isn't just academic, it's an applied prerequisite for manifestation. And so it's very important that we are able to manifest our ideas and make them come alive and enjoy what we write if that's possible. Finally, we need important research from all around the world. If this symposium has taught us anything, it is that we need all of the research being discussed here and all of these amazing, innovative, invigorating, critical presentations. And we need them to be able to be distributed widely in manuscript publications. So I hope that this video is able to help you in that process. And I hope that I'll be able to read your research in different publications, including the journal that is being represented here. So in conclusion, please contact me. I have a LinkedIn. I also have an Instagram. I also, of course, have an email. So I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so very much. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world listening to this now. And take care. Goodbye.
So Anastasia is one of our mentors, and actually since the presentation she relocated. She lived in Ramallah, Palestine. Wow. We can still reach her there. She's been there for almost 3 years now. Why are we doing this workshop? Just to give you some idea here. We've been doing this symposium so we could have a feeder pipeline for our journal, and this symposium is dedicated to women's scholarship because we would like to have a special issue on that topic and some related themes. In the past 6 years, we have had submissions that came, and we will give you all the deadlines for those who are submitting for the journal. We give you all the timeline, deadlines, and all of that. But in the past, we have had about 50% submission based on the symposium. And for those who submit, out of those 50, probably about half get accepted with a lot of support and mentoring as well. And of course, there are those that just go through and the blind reviews and easily, just go through it. We as the co-editors, we look at the publication, the submissions that come based on this, and of course, direct submissions. We use the method because we see the potential in some of the publications, the submissions we see and we get. And we use them because it's either the topic, the region, the focus, the country, the place, the voice that we are receiving is new and is relevant to our mission and our scope for the journal. And so Anastasia is one of the mentors. We have, I think, 3. And all of her materials, including a written manual that she mentioned, are available online on IIIT's website. And so the management of what happens after the conference is with Huda, because Huda is not just our support here, she is actually the managing editor for the journal. I should have mentioned that this morning. So we don't want this to be a presentation, but it's really a discussion of how we can become supportive of each other, and how, if you have any questions regarding taking your ideas and making them a publication. And we'd like to hear from you, but I just want to highlight one area that Anastasia mentioned, and I'm sure Nuraan has more to say too, but the one area that I see, and we've been doing this for more than 2 years now, the one area that I see that is problematic, and I see it a lot, is the area of lit review, just one area. And the lit review is usually looking at what others have done so far, where are the gaps, answering the questions that Anastasia posed. I've seen a lot of people who would write this as a report. This said that, this said this, this said that, this said this, and it reads in a way that is more of a report than a synthesis. And I had to learn that the hard way. It's not like I knew it when I started writing. I had to learn it from my own preparation in my graduate program and after as a faculty trying to publish. It's taking the ideas and the keywords and bringing them together to highlight the gaps. And that's where I see a lot of struggle with many of our submitters that come to us. And we're not saying that you have to follow exactly what we're saying regarding the format and the structure of your paper, but we are saying that here are some tips for you to improve your possibility and your chances of getting a peer review. So we will review first, see the potential, probably send it back to you for more time of edits and addressing some issues that we see. And then we go to the blind review when we see that your paper is ready for that. That does not happen in every journal, by the way. I've got rejections quickly from blind reviews without even any support from that or editors or editor of the journal. But what we do is break this into steps. Submission, we'd like to encourage a lot of people who are online with us as well as in person to convert their papers into submissions. Submit to us too. We will tell you yes or no, give you the green light for review or not. And we'll have some exchanges with you. Please do not take that personally because some people feel like, oh, I put my best and it's okay to push back. But I think that trying to work together to make it happen and work with the blind reviews is key. And then of course our reviewers will give us a yes or no, and a lot of times we'll get revised, we submit, and then we go from there. So that's the process. That's what we would like to encourage. That's what we would like to see happening with more and more publications coming our way from related topics and areas that we don't usually get publications from. That's it for me, I guess, for now, and we can open for questions or thoughts.
Questions. Yeah. Okay, thank you again. I hope I'm not being annoying.
No.
So I think you nailed it with the literature review because I've been struggling with it for the past 6 months. I'm working on a very controversial topic. Actually, it's the feelings of alienation among high school students and teachers. And as you may have guessed, the concept is very pervasive. It's everywhere. It's salient. It's in sociology, psychology. So I've been struggling with the literature review, basically, especially because my supervisor has insisted upon a critical literature review. Yeah. So what I understood from his guidelines is that I should give my opinions about the previous studies. So for example, I shouldn't just compare and contrast, but I should also give my personal opinion. So what I did, because I've been really struggling, like it was really hard for me, especially because here I need to contextualize. Right. In the case of Morocco, in the case of Islam Arab culture. Mm-hmm. So I needed to contextualize the concept, which is not as, the definition given by the sociologists in the West are not the same as the ones we give in Arabic, al-i'tiraf. So yeah. It's pretty different. Yeah. So I don't really know. At some point, I think I've lost the thread because I've been engaged in more of like Islamic thoughts and philosophy about different topics, because alienation is just everywhere and it's pretty hard. So I don't know. I really don't know if you can tell. Okay, so just I haven't
finished. That's what
yet.
you do. Why are you doing your thesis?
Yeah. It's not an article yet. It's just for the thesis.
Yeah, that's the thesis. It's a thesis.
Yeah. Okay. It's not for the article, because article maybe it's easier. You've got like a concise idea. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Okay. That was perfect. So the question is, should I continue like giving my opinions while also comparing and contrast? Is it what critical literature review is about, or am I just like lost?
Yeah. No, you're not lost.
Okay.
You're not alone. So this is a general problem. You need to understand that every single study has its limitations. And every single study has a particular parameter which you need to establish from the outset. So in the introduction of your thesis, you're going to have to clarify what it is you're drilling down deep. It's not about breadth, it's about depth, right? So you identify the context, and often that happens, we get papers, but what is the context? Authors often assume that we know exactly what's happening in Morocco, for example, and our readers don't. So you have to offer us, take us in to the context. Make sure the paper can stand on its own without you having to explain it, right? And say, for the purposes of this thesis, this is the central question or concern driving this thesis, right? And I tell my own students, write up that question and paste it against your wall somewhere so that you can remind yourself that's the focus. Because the more you read, the easier it's going to become to deviate. And suddenly you're going to the literature, and the more you kind of going, the more you're accumulating. And then you have all these different viewpoints and how to put it together. So what your supervisor is saying to you, within that parameter, identify the key authors or theories or debates you want to use, right? You've got to always show both sides of the argument. So you've got to be able to ward off the critic from the outset. You've got to show cognizance that I am aware that there are more viewpoints here. And I'm not discounting them. And that's what your supervisors, you put the view sheet says, where is your voice? So it's not simply to Ilham's point saying, so-and-so said this, and so-and-so that. I mean, that's in fact death by literature review, right? You've got to show these are the cornerstones of the debates. These are the key disagreement points. And these are the points of agreement. And then you locate yourself and you say, for the purposes of this study, this is the position I'm going to adopt. Does that make sense? Yes. So you kind of wade through all the kind of discussion points, and depending on the topic, and this is often a problem. So sometimes we get papers where people are talking about contemporary struggles of women post 9/11. This is an example, right? But then the literature review was written before 9/11 took place. So you're drawing on literature which predates the focus of the paper. So you've got to make sure your literature, I mean, there's some canonical texts, some texts that never date, particularly in philosophy, but of course there are texts which date. So you've also got to be clear about which texts are in use, which are the relevant texts. And again, that question is going to guide you. So I hope I've answered you. Yeah. So you're not lost, you're just on that journey, as Dr. Rashid said, as long as you're on the journey.
Absolutely. Yes, that's exactly what my supervisor had said, because I sent him like an early draft of the lit review, and he said, but where is your voice? Yeah. Especially because I'm working in the context of critical pedagogy. So I needed my voice in there. And he said, this is recycling, this is not literature review.
Quite correct.
So yeah, that's where I got lost. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much.
Yeah. And what I would add to that is that 2 points. One is that when you're voicing your own perspective, make sure that nobody else is making that same argument. Otherwise, you're going to say, okay, well, who else? You are not aware of this and that literature. So try to support it with some citations of people who share your thoughts. That's one. Second, we follow American Psychological Association, which is a little bit different than, I don't know what you do here, like there's Chicago and there's MLS. And you use APA. Okay, APA traditionally has been very conservative, I would say, very strict about using their voice, about saying not your own, but someone said this to be more scientific. And more we're seeing flexibility with the running side of APA, encouraging actually that voice that's what you're talking about. So we have been through a period where people were like, oh no, we cannot, like even very clear, don't say your opinion. But we're moving away from that a little bit with saying your own opinion, your orientation.
What about the passive, using the passive voice, for instance?
Yeah. So the APA encouraged, I was telling Nuraan this morning, I was trained to use the passive voice and not say, I would like to approach this way. But we were told in graduate school and when I wrote my dissertation, don't do that. Do not put I. Mm-hmm. Put, scholars advocate for blah, 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 such as, and you have a citation. It's not your voice, it's someone else's, but I think there's a lot more flexibility right now to do that. And at least for our journal, we tolerate that, even though we say use APA. So anytime you want to look at the formatting of APA and try to find a way to bring your voice, I think that it's encouraged by us at least.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah, sure.
Just want to add that this idea of third-person detachment is not really reconcilable with social science research. This idea that research is objective in social sciences doesn't exist. There's no such thing. Your research question is driven by your own interests. So there's really a subjectivity in that, right? So there's no such thing of I'm detached. So the inside status, just declare your positionality. And don't be afraid to use the I. It's particularly pertinent. We were talking about this morning. Yes. Particularly pertinent in ethnography studies, in autoethnography studies, but it's about giving voice to voices that have been marginalized, and to lay claim to views. To say this is my position on something, and this is what I'm arguing for. But why? So substantiate. You still have to offer a reasonable argument. Right? It's not just about emotive writing. It's about offering a reasonable argument that can be substantiated. But by all means, you are welcome to use the I. Okay?
We also have some people here who published with us, like Fatima and Ray and Professor Ben, right? Yeah, and so
I could share my experience.
Maybe that with the microphone, please.
Did you wait for the microphone?
Yeah, share your experience and say how wonderful we are. I know it's late. I know we've been sitting here for a long time to get a sense of humor. Feel free.
Yeah, so welcome to everyone. I'm very happy to see both of you, Professor Nuraan, Davids, and Dr. Ilham, and just learn that you are full up. The one always responding. So, no, just one thing from what she said is, no, it's not that when you are submitting your manuscript that it is easier. It's not at all easier compared to a thesis, because knowing these two people there, as you're talking, this is the way that they provide you with the review in the manuscript when you receive them. So sometimes I felt that it was a bit harsh, I would say. No, in the certain sense that I received that feedback. But then when you read through and then you try to refine what you have written, then you see that it is an improved version. And then when you get the feedback, then they say, they encourage you to go ahead and improve again. And then when you get the final approval, and it's a better version. And I think that we as academics and even students, this is what we need to have to grow as a researcher and develop that. And I think that self-confidence comes when we receive the feedback. It could be maybe we look at it from our side negative, but when you think, well, they are more constructive and they are developmental for us to grow and as a researcher. I would like to thank you I can see now I have faces in front of me, and I'm happy. And of course, we will, together with the University League, try to come forward with other manuscripts. Thank you very much.
I just want to add, thank you for that. It's really helpful. I just want to maybe clarify something. The idea here is not that we are critiquing manuscripts because we want to be difficult or harsh. We want to make sure that when the manuscripts go out for review, it has a better chance of being published. Because we know it's not easy. When those reviews come back and somebody just says, reject, this paper makes no sense, and some reviews can be really awful. So we really try to make sure that we adopt a more supportive and developmental approach, because we know it's not easy to get published. At the same time, we do have a fairly high rejection rate. We reject, I think, up to 50% of our manuscripts don't make it. And that's also about, as much as we want to make sure we publish historically neglected areas of research, we also are very focused and committed to producing a quality journal that's going to stand up to scrutiny. So it's a hard balancing act we have to follow. But I think thus far we've managed to pull it off.
And I can add, the best is that now it is in Scopus.
Yes.
Correct.
So it has a high reputation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
After only 3 years.
Yeah.
There's the online question regarding integration of knowledge. Actually, I just want to clarify for those who are interested in Islamic studies, Islamic thought, Islamic philosophy, and all of that, maybe not necessarily Islam philosophy. IIIT has another journal where people can publish that type of work. Our scope is really looking at education in its broadest sense, education, human nature, human development, policy, pedagogy, philosophy of education. All of these go under our JEMS, our Journal of Education in Societies. But integration of knowledge and those types of topics are important, but they're not, relevant or within the scope of our journal. So what we'd like to encourage actually are submissions, like when you finish your thesis and you want to convert it into an article for publication. If it's a research article, it will go through the process that our professor here described. And it's really exactly what Nuraan said. It's to support you to go through the peer review, not to be rejected. That's what we're trying to do. And sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. The collaboration and this collaborative approach is what we're trying to improve and to get more papers published. For those who want to publish on the other areas, there is that other journal that Huda can tell you about for these types of publications. So that's for the question.
Yeah, I sent him the link, yes.
Okay, thank you. Ray and Fatma, we had a lot of exchanges. Oh, and I want to say, sorry, before I turn it to you. Isra is here, and she is our book review editor, our review essays, practitioner notes editor. These are like shorter publications. Do not go through the rigor of those peer reviews. We will review. She's very rigorous, and she will review those to improve them. But you don't have to go. It doesn't have to be a full research paper. It doesn't have to be, reviewed by blind reviewers. So that's another option for those who are presenting. And I don't know who's online, but if you don't feel like you can develop your paper into a research paper, full-fledged research paper, feel free to submit as an essay, review essay. And of course, we'd love to get more book reviewers because we have books and we don't have reviewers.
Absolutely. Book reviews, review essays, and I'm here to support. If you have any questions, feel free to come and talk to me. So, of course.
And Ray and Fatima, do you have any insights? Not about us being harsh, though. We had a lot of exchanges with this paper. It's a fascinating topic. I still remember the topic, so
yeah. Yes, our paper was about empowering girls in Upper Egypt, and we were doing quantitative data analysis. And the journal and Dr. Ilham and Nuraan, it was more of coming from qualitative, and we had to, we spent more than about a year, going back and forth in email, explaining our thoughts and what we see, and adjust to the journal as well. So what I want to highlight, as Dr. Ilham said, don't take it personal, and also explain yourself as an author. If you write something and you believe in it and you just try to make it clear and convince the editors, and if they are convinced, they will go with you at the end, as we have done. And we should acknowledge that we have done lots of revision stages and until the paper got published, and it's done, and we are happy that it's published at JEMS. So publication is not easy and it takes time, but you need to dedicate time, effort, and don't take it personal. Just work on it and make things clear. And one very important point, Dr. Noor said that when you write, you think that you write clear because you really know everything about the topic, but the reader doesn't. So put yourself on the shoe of the reader. Just make things very clear and do iteration, and you will get there. That's from me. Right? If you want to add anything. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just to add, I think exposing yourself to the review process makes you quite vulnerable. I mean, you're quite precious about this thing you've written. You think, wow, this is great, this is wonderful, and it's and the blood, sweat, and tears are in it. And then somebody comes back and just rips it apart. And it can be really hard to come back to that paper. So my advice really is, I say this to my students as well, once you've written something, put it away for 2 days and let the joy wear off that it's done and come back to it and now read it again. And inevitably, you're going to go, oh my word, I like that? And the review process is not meant to be something which takes away from you. It's meant to strengthen what you've written. And so you have to, as an academic, get some skin. Get some, be thick-skinned. That's what you need. Let it wash off you. It's fine. Because every single academic that you will ever encounter, all your professors will teach you now, right? Every single one of us, myself included, have papers rejected. Yes. Okay? So you are not alone. You are part of a huge club. So you just got to learn to go with the flow and say, okay, let me take this. I can change this. And then you will actually find, hopefully, it is a stronger argument now. It is clearer now. And that's the aim. Okay.
Maybe just a few final words. You have already at 4:30, but just a few. Okay, I'll take the question. Just two things. We do encourage quantitative as well as qualitative submission. So, and we came to these exchanges with you based on things like how many tables do you really include? Like with you, Professor Bell, he also did quantitative based on our data because we have our data from the AEMS and mapping the terrain studies we've done. It's all public. Anyone can go there, look at the data, and write papers based on that quantitative sets of data. About 50,000 participants over 2 years. So we do have that, angle. But there are things like how many do you present this in a table? Do you present 10 tables? Do you present it in written thing? Where do you set? Where do you put the reliabilities? Where do you put, So there are a lot of that. And maybe I'm thinking that the follow-up to what Anastasia did would be something about how do you prepare quantitative submission data analysis that is different than the qualitative one. And I think, and we do for both, which may be also something helpful for people. And I also want to highlight one thing before we go to the question. Sometimes voices, I know that as a Palestinian, now I'm talking in the first person. As a Palestinian, I used to silence myself and do not criticize anyone, because I will be rejected. And even saying that I'm a Palestinian in my writing hasn't been something I've done, because I thought, okay, if I stay out of this, my identity out of this, I will have better publication, and that was not true. So we get that some of the publications we receive, submissions are like that, and we actually say, hey, talk about the context. And we have submissions from Palestine. We say, talk about the occupation. It's okay. Talk about, as long as you're not, inciting, you have evidence, all of that stuff. So don't silence yourself. Don't silence your voice. And that's what we're trying to do, which is a very different approach from mainstream publications that you see in the US and in Europe. It's totally, and it's not scientific. It's actually coming from a place that is different than what you would see in mainstream academic journals. So that's just a few thoughts on that too. Hanan?
Yeah. I just wanted
Hold on 1 second, Hanan. Sorry. Because people online will struggle to hear you.
Thank you very much. I just have 2 questions, one regarding publications and one regarding the literature review, because you've given some really interesting pieces of advice. So regarding publication, do you accept papers that are not part of the symposium? For example, if I have this paper on decolonizing the curriculum through the incorporation of Muslims or something like North African studies, okay? And I'm really trying to work hard on it. Unfortunately, it got rejected, and I'm really still working on it. It feels bad, especially after like 2 months of waiting, and then yeah, they send me reviews and stuff, and it's rejected. My second question is, now for my thesis, I'm conducting this kind of literature review, but it's not critical literature review. It's more of a historical literature review, tracing a particular point, a particular phenomenon from the very beginning, all right, and coming all the way down until recent times. Okay, my thesis is about the influence of the Arab Muslim literary heritage on the Western knowledge. So it's pretty much related to my presentation, but it's from a philosophical literary angle. And the thing is, I started with like studying the Arab Muslim heritage from the very beginning, okay, until now, okay, and what they have added to the world from the very beginning, including the science and etc. The thing is, I'm also trying to see to what extent, because it's a mixed method, trying to see to what extent the Moroccan university students are aware of that. Okay, so my question is, should I include in my literature review two parts, one about that influence and the other one about the quantitative study, which will be talking and tackling the students' cultural identity, because I will be studying the students' cultural identity with regards to that, to what extent they're familiar with that. It will be some sort of an experiment, etc. So in my literature review, should I include like two parts, or I don't really know yet how to approach that. Thank you.
So it's really hard to answer that question, because I need to see that. I mean, not that I'm asking you to see the study, but I would need to see what is the research question here. Remember, your literature review and what you review is determined by the research question, its objectives, main and subsidiary questions. It's all linked. It's one thread you pull through the entire thesis. So whatever literature you're going to review has to speak to the research focus. So if you are saying to me you are looking at an historical unfolding as well as the description of identities, and there is no harm in having two sections. And in fact, it might even give you more structure, and it becomes easier for the reader to follow. Yeah, but I would not be a very good academic at this point if I just give you a straightforward answer, because I haven't read your proposal or anything like that, right? But that's just from what you said to me. The next question, your first question, we do not only publish from the symposium, we are open to any submissions that's within the scope of the journal. We've had one special issue in the past, last year, that focused on Muslim societies in the African context. And I think that's where the Upper Egypt paper also landed. And throughout the year, we are sitting at the moment with approximately how many, 18 to 20, Huda?
Around that, yeah.
Submissions that have nothing to do with the symposium. But we use the symposium as a conduit as well, to make sure that, because often there's a question earlier on the chat, somebody asked about proceedings. So we don't have conference proceedings, right? But we do encourage you to get your work published. Obviously, it means you've got to transition the presentation into a rigorous academic article. Make sense? Okay, thanks.
And I don't want to put Solat on the spot, but if you want to do a timeline type of article, Solat just published one on this timeline and discussing that. It was accepted, and she put a lot of work into it. So talk to Solat. She's a writer, she's just hiding now behind her. Thank you very much. We can continue the conversation, informally. Now we break, and those who are interested in the tour with Sukaina, going on a bus trip again, please meet us by the gate again, like we did. We didn't do that, but meet us at the gate, the entrance to the university. There will be a bus there. If not, have a restful afternoon, and we'll see you tomorrow at 9, inshallah. Thank you. Thank you for everyone online as well for speaking with us. Take care. Bye-bye.
It's great. It's great.